Did this fellow Wayne come on again? Or
I
did
don't,
you don't see him?
I don't see him. I haven't heard from him, but he is on the email list now, so
Okay.
he should get the emails.
Okay, let's see how it did he connect with Dr. Joe?
I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. I haven't spoken with him since our last conversation with him here.
There's one guy that's very interesting that I heard a little bit of a talk of his, and he's a eye doctor, but and pretty famous apparently. But he's also a homeopathic eye doctor,
Oh, okay.
and so he kind of some of the interesting things was pretty good. He said, "Okay, try to eat as much colorful stuff as possible. That helps the eyes.
Oh,
Blueberries help the eyes."
okay.
So you don't need to wear glasses or whatever. And then, well, I do a lot of the old releasing the eyes just to wander around kind of situation out there where it's not so focused. But he was pretty good. And then he's got a foundation though. But he had some concoctions, vegetarian concoctions that you can wash the eye out for certain ingredients and certain
Oh,
situations. And he kind of, I don't know if he's a pro glasses or not, but pro operations and things like that. He teaches you how to. I'll see if I explore it further. I'm just stumbling upon some things that I do anyway. I do keep it naturally anyway. But it's like the breathing. When I stumble upon the breath book, he devoted himself to it in a way that was interesting to see how it navigated through time. But I've been doing it for 30 some odd years or whatever, and also doing most of these things that come to you naturally.
yes.
Okay. But he had some very interesting things on the eye restoration, and that
That's probably my project after my teeth,
yeah.
my eyes.
And then the other two had the son and father who introduced the teeth explosion here. Have you read them about the
No, but you told me all about them.
Well, he does say practice putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth when you're up. That somehow when you put the tongue on the roof of your mouth, your face aligns again.
Mm-hmm.
And your teeth line up, because I can move, as I said, I can move my face over this way to that way, to line it up. So it would be weird. So it is probably true, like everything else medically, the more that it was natural for us to do dentistry and this and that, the more it became kind of normal. And then these other things became normal. And you say your son resisted braces.
Yes, well, I took him to the dentist for the first time last week, and he and Lotus have a small overbite, but it's not a big deal, and he does not want braces, but he does have 2 cavities, so we need to start working on that.
Well, I mean, it was not to do something or react to it, but it was to understand that somehow all the things that were once family doctors and family dentists and things like that then became businesses. And they're owned by big, larger business. Not only the dentist own it, but a corporation may be in it. So
yeah.
Once they are that, that's what our friend the doctor says, that the insurance companies are driving them crazy. That they're having to fill out forms. He was in the emergency room, and he says that all day they're spent filling out forms.
Crazy.
And that the insurance people have taken over the medical industry completely. So
yes, the dentists seem to be in their own boat though, because I don't even have dental insurance. I don't
think I have it yet either. No,
Yeah,
insurance. I have
it's really expensive and they don't cover
still
much.
expensive anyway.
Right, and they don't cover much, right? So what's the point?
It's amazingly out there. So I haven't gone to much at all. And it's okay. I'm feeling I'm managing the health, but then I do see that it's coming and going. And the situation like that. And then Segway also got sick that he was here. But with his feet also just expanded like that. And whether it's a guy.
Oh, really?
Or whether there's and I say, a funny thing happened to you on the move from the yurt to the room, where the yurt, you could have a separate life and you could sneak and go through your own things, or slip out
Right.
in the middle of the night, or play rap all night at 4 a.m. And
Right.
that, so you understand and stay with that scene. Once you came into the room, it was more civilized, and you say, "Holy shit, I'm living in a space here." So I think that a fundamental shift takes place anyway, whether perceptively or not, but it did happen. And he's making his jewelry now, this silver jewelry that he got this machine to
Oh,
duplicate stuff or whatever.
oh,
So,
that's cool.
and Seth is making bags and stuff like that. So
Ah,
they may meet in the Mary space, since she can't be there that much. And then Spiro may be coming down on Sunday on his before he leaves. He's up in Taos now.
mm,
But also the underlying premise for most is the broken heart, the breakup of the love affair, and then when it becomes spiteful or hurtful, and you see that the person is actually, you feel that the person is actually doing it, like a cheesy move or something, and
yeah.
so then when you see spite enters into the story. And and they say, well, why? I say, because you can't be in the story any longer. There's a move. There's a move to that you would object to. In other words, if you were present to it, you would say, no, please, that's a bit too cheesy move, or this or that. Okay, the way they have you out in the world is like pursuing fame or pursuing the buck in a way that you still like it to come out of your being who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, but quite a few people then are feeling that, well, quite a few people, meaning Rafi, Spiro, and Segway, even though they're very different scenes that they were in, they all had love affairs that just seemed to shift or change or break up and let's say if they float around each other's company in the same time.
Right.
But we'll see how it unfolds here, but it's still just waiting, as you say. As far as you can see, you're taking care of the kids. To put it in simple terms. To put it in creative terms, you're kind of working with memory and structure and time and space. So it's almost as if you're preparing some element of the movie in it, that the children don't get caught up in the story, that somehow they have a free life. And that friendship is a kind of medium that allows you a certain freedom in situations, because you can share hidden things with friends that you can't share with literal family and structure like that. So the friendship becomes a kind of creative process. What is that? I just got a notice for something. Well, I don't even know who they are. Stadium Goods.
Oh, geez.
But I guess, do you get that? So, no.
Not that one.
How are you doing, Derek? How's it been feeling now? And how did they manage the remains of John? Did the family take it?
I haven't heard yet, but I guess the process is stuck in bureaucracy. So,
well, what happened with Michelle? It was finding out anything there. Well, it did go to the morgue, and once it was in the morgue, it was sort of locked into a situation there. We then, once it was released from the morgue, what the findings were, then we were able to put in motion. Someone mentioned, I think Reed had mentioned, a couple of people who take care of cremations and services there and give it a nice feeling and pick it up and do all that. And I think it cost us around $2,500 to do that. But then there were other institutions there that did a very We didn't go with that one, but that was $3,600, and they would do a kind of mass, and they would do the cremation. So a washing, a sacred washing of the body, and this and that. Sort of, and the people,
Oh, that's nice.
you know, and there's just a tenderness with that. And
Yeah.
so there are places like that, but I guess the family must be taking care of it, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll hear word once everything is done that I can go pick up John's remains.
And so then you mean that you'll be sharing the ashes?
I asked if I asked Cookie if she wanted us to split the ashes, and she said no. Go ahead, because John's wishes were to have his ashes spread into the ocean here in San Francisco. So
Is she going along with that?
yeah, she said if that's what John wished, then she's happy with that. So. And
Yeah.
so I had offered, because she had mentioned taking him up to, I guess, Lollipop Mountain in Woodstock. And so when I mentioned what John wanted, she was instantly fine with it. So.
Will you go out on a boat?
I don't think so. John used to walk with us down. This is probably maybe 10 years now, down to Christie Field. And we would sit and chant and play guitar, maybe eat some food, that kind of thing. We would do that. Maybe we had done that, I don't know how many times on Saturdays. So we thought it might be nice to do a memorial like that, walk him down to the Christie Field and spread his ashes there.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. What do you think? Now, some people are, I told you there's a fellow here that we still may go after who makes rocks,
Yeah.
a stone and rocks out of the ashes. But there is also now folks who are doing composting. The challenge with composting is that you take the body and compost the body.
Oh, you don't burn it. Oh, that'd be weird.
Composting is becoming very popular now because then people feel that the trees or the plants that they come out of like fig trees are very popular from the composting.
Would you just bury the body whole? How do you do that?
I think that they have a service that, I don't know, you can look it up a bit, whether you do it at home or whether in fact it is a service that accelerates the process for you in the soil.
I think I saw a picture once where the body was folded up in a pod and then planted into the ground, and the tree would.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. But it seems weird though to deal with a body like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is both things are there. I would say that for me, the ashes into the compost made more sense. You know what I mean? That the ashes being part of the compost would be just as the body was part of the compost, only in the sense that the compost was what you were after. So the body, there would be a complete composting that took place. So it seems to me that I don't know, we may still do the ashes. I'm keeping them still covered under a robe here with a few other ashes that we have. Michelle, and then Alan Gordon from Woodstock's, his ashes. And
I'm surprised John didn't want his ashes to go to you. He didn't say that, Derek.
No, he didn't convey that.
Although I'm happy if that's what you want, Penny, to do that. If you think that'd be best.
Well, no, but his sister wants to give you the ashes too. So the sister didn't give you the ashes to send to some crazy guy in Mexico.
True. True enough.
The others did. Alan Gordon, there's even a picture on the box of the ashes of him sitting in a rocking chair. But the family wanted me to have them like in the split up of the ashes, and also the same when Doctor died. In fact, we made the ashes. We had to crush the body with our hands, and make the ashes out of the situation, and then split it up 3 ways to go to India and Italy and California.
I took just a little tiny baggie from each of my parents so I can just keep them a little tiny bit.
Oh, I see. My mother passed away here. I spent the last night in bed with her, the day she died, singing songs to her.
Mm.
So that was just, she died with all of us here. Everyone gave her a kiss individually. Bye-bye. And then in the evening, I made up some prayers or something, and then hung out in the room, but just sang some very street songs in the bed. And then we sent her on the train to, I guess the folks were waiting there in Long Island or New York or something on the train. We had it sent there, and then they had a ceremony, put it next to my father's grave.
Mm.
But it seemed to me that, we kind of just made up our own feelings and everyone shared in it. So everyone who had feelings for her was here at the time and gave her a kiss and this and that. And then once we put the body on the train, we were kind of finished with the story. Then my family picked it up and took care of it there. So what do you think? You want the ashes?
Not me, no. I mean, I feel like the body is not who John was. I feel like who John was is sort of in all of us, it seems now.
And how is Carrie with it? Are you and Carrie finding a new feeling between you?
Yeah, we've interacted some. I'm going to meet him tonight, actually, to talk about the key thing that Cookie wanted and maybe pick out the keepsakes and things. So it seems.
Yeah,
okay.
He still is a bit hurt in the non-recognition from the family of their friendship.
Yeah, but I guess he had lost it a little bit around some of the decisions that were made with John before he passed away. So I can see, there's definitely
well, the decisions didn't include him.
Right. And then I think, I guess why would it from a family's perspective, so I get it. It's a weird situation.
Yeah, but basically then you've assumed the role and he's kind of out of it.
Not from my perspective, I'll just sort of, I can mediate, all of a sudden I'm in a role where I want to respect the wishes of Carrie too, because I recognize that he spent a lot of time with John for the last 10 years but I'll then also work with the family at the same time. So see if I can't have a balanced outcome.
Well, that's why I'm saying we're giving you a Dharma yoga movement. You've been released into the Dharma yoga, but then you also have to see that Carrie may be quick to hurt if in fact he feels he's treated like, as they say, like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Where you feel that you've been putting years in looking after John and then the family just dismisses. So his premise may be that, and then say, hold it, you're making decisions that don't even include people who have actually been there with the circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow you presume your intimate relationship to be more than the family, but then you see once the family asserts itself, it negates your life as being a secondary life. The primary life was the family. It declares it.
Yeah.
But then you see for most of us, the primary life is this life that we've created.
Yes, very much.
Not the history of something, So,
Right.
So whether they have ownership of the story is, and then a question when you feel that you've met the guy intimately and they've never met the guy. They've met the story of the guy. So in that, you could see where somehow something has been happening in Carrie where it's almost as if he's an instrument being tuned. Because of the caretaking and then the breaking up when it became a job and then then the one who broke up in the job and hurt then comes back and finds his body and then goes through that thing and is kind of overseeing a natural dying while everyone is putting tubes and this and that and saving lives and doing that. You see that you're trying to keep some, but you have no role. You're assuming the role. You're slipping in the nighttime. You go in the time when the family's not there or this is not happening, but you're observing the story. And in observing the story, you see that you're doing more in observing the story than everyone who's doing. Because you see that it is that what we've been talking about, living and dying, is right there. It's not ambiguous like in our own life, where living and dying is happening, but you see, you can see the living and dying process happening. So then he's in a difficult position of trying for it to have some dignity. So in that moment of deciding whether you should call the nurse or the doctor, or whether the nurse and doctors are colluding with you and not hanging around so that you're left with what they know is happening. But then in that last minute, then he calls me. And so then I'm in the last minute of John dying or living. And I'm speaking to him in a way, or not even speaking, but nudging him in a way where there is, you see the obviousness of living and dying and whether there's desire or not. And they say, why? I say, because if there was desire to live, then it would find a way to breathe again and get its, the mind then would take over and then accelerate certain forms or whatever. So that you see that there is, in fact, not a decision like in literal terms, should I or shouldn't I? But the body is asking the question. And if there's something of interest or something that touches you, it still has life left in it.
Or someone that's calling you back, maybe?
I think that his dying was more beautiful than his return.
Yeah, it seemed
I think
beautiful.
the return would have brought him back into the literal story. But that the passing brought all these forces together in a way. Where even though they were hurt 20 years ago and 30 years ago and this and that, in the loss of him and in the period of loss of him where people that had to be responsible, even though they may not have wanted to be, even though they may have been pissed off of having to fight from years ago, that something in his passing brought a kind of responsibility to be there for something. And so I don't think that Kerry would have been the right person to negotiate that. So then I think that Derek and Joan, but Joan is also an essential factor in somehow a presence, brings a kind of sanity to the circumstance that's not literal sanity, but no bullshit in some way. We're here to kind of say bye-bye to John, do the right thing. And so I'm feeling then that that Derek stepping in and with Joan in the picture somewhat is forcing people to be human when they would have played out their trip. And it's close to that also. Whereas with Kerry, they would have played out more of a reaction to it. So I feel that they're bringing common sense to it. That's not to say that Kerry, but he would have forced a kind of reflection on everyone. Like the daughter then would have seen that she lost her dad, hadn't spoken to or this or that. So is that okay, Derek?
Yeah.
We needed a kind of someone who spoke like you for the moment.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Go speak common sense, Derek.
Do my best.
And Joan has a background, as if you're a detective team or something like that. And you make everyone make everyone act with some dignity and humor and grace. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Nothing else can be gotten out of it. Now, what artifacts are you talking about?
She had just suggested anything that I might think would be something they would want to keep. She brought up a vest and a cap, and I know that he has a vest and a cap that he could, that he had that I think that they might like. But she said, I trust you to make that decision. If there's something in there that you think would be good, then feel free to send that. So.
Okay, so does that seem cool?
Yeah, I feel like I'll go there tonight and me and Carrie can have that conversation and see if go through the effects and see if there's something that he might think would be good. So
Yeah. So yeah, I think that he's kind of moving with it graciously now, I think, with you all. And I think it was all handled pretty beautifully, given the circumstance. I think that your entree into the story kind of saved the day.
cool. Unbeknownst to me, for sure.
Well, I think Carrie's presence was important in this situation because it's part of their novel, part of their movie together. So the elements that seem accidental, finding the body after breaking up, and after there's Carrie now. I say, Carrie, how are you doing?
Hey, Danny.
Okay,
I'm
so
doing okay.
we're speaking with Derek here, where we needed you to be there for the passing of John, but we didn't need you there for the family.
Yeah,
So we needed you there for the sadhana or the journey, but we didn't need you for the literalness.
yeah.
So then we say, okay, who should we call? I say, I got an idea. How about Derek and or Joan? And I say, why? Because just going there, they'll be kind of practical enough to no trip.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So no family trip. So then basically, and so let's say there would be a fear of connecting with you because you would bring a whole other dimension in the practical.
Yeah,
You understand? So their capacity to say what to do with the remains, what to do, the literalization of it, brought out, I think, maybe a sisterhood and what's her name? Cuckoo? A cookie? A cookie.
Okay.
Yeah, Cookie must be from the Bronx also.
yeah,
They lived in interesting neighborhoods. John lived in what they called Italian Harlem, which was 116th Street. There was an Italian neighborhood in the middle of Harlem that was pretty cool. And then he moved to the Bronx, which was also another neighborhood that was tough like that. So it's funny that you could see how the family would have grown. And so I would be kind of at home with that, where, in other words, I can kid around and put on an accent and act with a certain attitude, whatever, in order to reach a heartfelt.
Mm.
But I think that, is that okay, Carrie, that you kind of acted as a team in something?
yeah, definitely.
And that it was kind of have to kind of bring some grace to a circumstance where your circumstance was specifically your circumstance, the taking care of John over time, knowing what the illnesses were, in fact, in some way you could see them, living with them, then breaking up over the same thing that you're doing. You see the duality in a certain thing. There was a love and affection and then reaction in the same moment, where someone caring for me, I could make into a ball buster. Will you leave me alone with this? Do you want more lemonade or something like that? You say, stop it already. Okay. And I say, why? I say, because the pain in you is so captured you that anything else is distraction. The outside world is a distraction. So I feel that that's what's happening. The difference between a perceptive dying process and the normal dying process is that somehow in a perceptive dying process, you have a sense of what is unfolding. In the normal dying process, it's happening to you. But in the perceptive dying process, it's more like you're finishing a novel or you're finishing the movie. It's not bound to a literal you. So from my perspective, the release of the physical form is the release of the story into another place, into other people's memories, discoveries, situation. Your life experience then is sent out. Your kids will remember this or that. They may have a literal sense of this or that, but they'll see. So you see yourself flying over the circumstance, but the promise of that experience for the others is that you've left the body. Because while you're in the body, and I say, okay, if Kerry was trying to have this feeling of John now, while John was still alive, John would kick his ass. And if you, and John would not allow you to drive around and say, I don't know, who am I, where are we? And Kerry talked to my sister Cookie, are you kidding? Never happened. Don't let Kerry get near my daughter. But he would have told you, don't let don't let Derek meet my daughter either. Did you meet his daughter?
No, not yet. Not that I don't know that I
Did you
will.
meet the daughter?
Yeah, a couple times, just phone conversations and on Zoom.
So did you hit it off?
My first conversations with the family was kind of sweet, but yeah,
No, let's say if I'm John, I would say,
I become a bit of a.
let's say I'm flying over hay as John. And you're about, if you meet the daughter in a certain way, he said, holy shit, they're going to hook up.
No.
They say, no, hold it. So let's say he would do everything where you could. Okay. So let's say your role was not as a literal role,
Mhm.
but was to take care of somehow the purity of a situation without overdoing. I'm not talking pure, like crazy pure. I'm talking about that you saw there's a thread that you didn't want to turn into cheese into the story.
Yeah.
So you see in the literal death, the family then has a right to whatever their circumstance to do the story. The friends are relative to it. But you also see that John made a career out of friendships.
Hmm.
And so his life came out of friendships, and those friendships sometimes would explode, sometimes they would endear, sometimes they would literalize. In fact, the only thing is that when you have a creative life and then your relationships are coming out of the creative expression, you can't do ownership well. You can't, in other words, the person in the movie is your wife or your husband. But in literal life, if you say, hey, get me some eggs now or something like that, you can do that in the movie. But if you do that in our kind of movie, if you start ordering someone around, they say, oh, screw you. Okay. So you saw the magic was that there was a devotion that someone cooked something for you because they would love you to see it. And there's an interaction shared that has an element of lovemaking in it. But lovemaking meaning that everyone is kind of equal in the experience.
Right.
Okay. So in that, you see if it then turns into a literalness. So that challenge was there, that there was a spiritual thread that ran through it, and then a literal thread that would create explosions at times. And I say, why? I say, because in some sense, the teaching of the voice and the sound was a real love affair with someone. And so, it was actually, you had to have those sentiments of generosity, of feeling for the other person. So it was a kind of, you surrendered your ego to some extent to a shared space. But then when you saw that the person but then you were also falling for people. And people were falling for you. Once this intimacy was shared, without it being literal, but somehow you met sensuality, not sexuality so more. When it turned to sexuality, it became possessive. You would see there would be fights. And somehow then I would have to convey to John, look, it's not a possessive in the story. But there was an experience karmically in your body that you would have to experience again and again. You know, and creatively in this situation, because here you're living what is a creative life or a spiritual life, and there's a literal life being lived too by your body. And so you see that you will run into situations where when it literalizes, it means it loses someone making a breakfast for you out of a feeling for you, and you say, hey, you better get that breakfast now. You see, you entered into the story and killed it, where you made a job of it. And then when you made a job of it, the person, what am I, a sucker for doing this? Okay. So you see that something that came out of feeling, when it literalized, we couldn't do a kind of slavery about. That it had to come from a certain place in ourselves. And so all of this is not so clearly laid out in a book of how to. You see that your life is in a level of flux, and it's experiencing something in the real world. So you've had an experience in a situation there with John, where you experience both a creative world and a literal world at the same time. When the landlord would bang on the door, then you experience a literal world. And you took the other world that you were in with each other as a normalcy, when it was our creation. And it was the landlord that would try to make it normal. And this one that where you had to play, you would have to have money or something like that. But you also saw that the basis of the situation, the house was given to John. The furniture was this, it was all contributed, it came part of a larger sadhana and a larger picture unfolding. And that everyone that entered into it stepped into a creative act. And each person took a bit of it with them into their life. But then you saw almost the critical mass that John would go through when relationships shifted on him or left him. So I feel that the feeling was true. He did fall in love with each of the people that he cared for. And then in his eyes, when they violated something or did something or shifted the creative premise, then the story would become the reality, not what was happening, not the process that was happening in the story. So the process is usually unknown because it is not structured. But it was the process of the relationship that kept it together, not the literalness of it. So I feel that you acted within that experience. Now, to explain that, what your role was in the life to the family would come off pretty weird.
Yeah.
You say, what was it you were doing again? What's the philosophy? So somehow, even if a family that's broke relationship was, they make a discovery that the person had a life. And just like I discovered Michelle had a life, even though I knew she had a life, and even though everyone here, they were in contact and had affection for each other, and Jenny in New Zealand were listening to her, and she had fans and so on like that. I had something of a passing sense of it. But in her passing, I was really introduced to another literal world of so many people who hung out together and shared an affection together, and their lives interacted and so on. So I saw a similar sadhana to the journey that I went through. And seeing what she came out of, the moments that she came out of, and the life, the parallel life that was there, were the years just before I left for India. And the shift, so let's say you fly over the circumstance and you find hidden in plain sight, and then you get a message of how much they loved you in some letter that they were writing or something. Or friends say that, and yet You couldn't squeeze that out of the person, no matter what was there. But then you find it in retrospect. And you meet the being. And when you meet the being, the story is obviously that everything that came out of me was also a kind of search or a journey. That everyone in it was in a journey. And everyone in it extrapolated from their experience a life for themselves. And that to some extent that everyone within the story will have been a screw up at some time in their life. But then you also saw that the screwing up was that they could not live a false situation. So something brilliant happened, something in karma, something in dharma would happen where you would make a mistake or do something wrong or do that. Somehow that relieved you of the story that you were in. And the measure would be, as if they would measure me, and if I would join the Navy or something, they would measure my capacity to kill someone. What kind of trip would I need to learn? What kind of hypnosis would I need for the ability to overcome what there would be an inherent human resistance for? And I found in retrospect, as long as you thought it was a movie, you can do almost everything in it because it was a movie. But once it literalized in real life, you saw it was really vulgar. But it was exciting to jump with a parachute or to do something. Oh, it was really exciting to go through a whole experience like that. But then once it literalized, and you met the guys who were running the show. In fact, you meet the commander of the place having a fight with his wife, and he's going to order like 1,000 people to go and invade or something. So you see, you kind of run into a disparity in yourself, where the screwing up was not exactly the screwing up, but somehow it was holy work. The screwing up was actually a holy act in some way, because it kind of preserved the innocence. What was punished because you were innocent. And the innocence just couldn't do, wasn't a doer that way. It had to be human also. So I feel that you did good work there just by being Kerry and being normal. You looked out for something. And I think then that also shifted something with Derek and you and maybe Joan, where somehow I was pushing more for there was an agreement between you assuming different roles. So if you ran into an obstacle, then a Joan would be seemingly a nice person to talk to, a Cookie, just from the feminine perspective of care and having a similar feeling about the circumstance. So basically, I was just seeing different energies. It didn't matter that it really worked. It didn't have to work, but it did matter that you were conveying a sense of John. You were conveying a friendship with John to his family.
Yeah.
And so it seems that the intermediary is the sister Cookie, who sees that you kind of cared for him and that he had a life. Is that okay?
Yeah. I'd like her to see that, I guess, that John did have this whole life. A lot of people he touched, and I think maybe she does. I don't know.
I think she sees it. She's been.
No, she remembers she must remember the tough dude that was there in John.
For sure.
How is your circumstance now? Is it clarified, the situation you're in?
My situation is still kind of up in the air. We're definitely up in the air, yeah.
Up in the air meaning that it exists and it doesn't exist at the same time.
Yeah, and not finding any kind of deep invitations in any aspect of life at this moment, and So just kind of hanging out right now in that space, not really wanting to start anything without a real feeling. But I'm still doing some music and looking at there was some invitations for other places to live. Actually, so just kind of
That's the fifth conversation.
checking it out.
As I say, Spiro is now up in Taos, just left San Francisco. He's up in Taos and maybe he'll come to visit here Sunday. And then from Taos, he may then have to go for more medical work in San Francisco. I think that Eric and Jennifer, his friends, are offering him a home in Silver Lake or something, California, for a couple of months to do some writing or to maybe do some teaching there with students or whatever. So I think that there is a group of folks whose situation is in flux, but it has to do a lot with relationship shifting or changing or being in flux, like you say, where it's not exactly this or not exactly that. But we'll say, for instance, Segway's lady friend then wants to take her daughter and move to Las Vegas, where her father lives there, who happens to be a district attorney or something like that, or the attorney general of Las Vegas there. And but she does work in restaurants and clubs like that, so a kind of knowing people easily like that, where there's a whole group of people who hug each other. And so Segway in the picture would ruin it. Just like a Spiro in the picture of his lady friend as they're breaking up would ruin it, because you would see that the moves were cheesy. You understand that okay, and then somehow it sends you to a place where it exists and it doesn't exist simultaneously. So it means that you can make a future, there is a kind of future idea that this will happen, or maybe we'll open this together, or we'll share that or something in the future. But you almost see that you've stepped into the movie. And that somehow in the movie, it has different values than it has in everyday life. And the different values are that an audience watching you, would they believe it? Would they cry at certain moments? Would they, if they saw what you went through in the last week, would the audience buy it? Would they be touched it? So that, I think that audience is God or this or that or prayer or whatever they call it, but that somehow you feel, you become aware that you somehow have an audience in your being. And the audience isn't judging or not judging, it is taking a picture of it. And if in fact you see a picture of some of the things you've been through, you would be shocked of how normal they appear to be and how deep it went. So you are in the creative sphere of your life, where the literal and the evocative and the creative are kind of all merging. Are you okay? You'd like to be able to have a civilized circumstance if you can.
Yeah.
And Derek, you're still okay there? Yeah.
All's well.
Yeah, it's not getting out of hand.
Your sound is coming weirdly through here. Is that the same for you, Derek?
Yeah, it sounds like Carrie's internet connection may be a little shaky.
Yeah. Are you getting ready to go then, Kai? Oh, you still have time.
Just using the restroom. No, I'm good till 5.
But between us here, we're kind of applying a exploration as part of the life. So in retrospect, that Kerry is there before John passes, even though he's been caretaking for a long time, with John, he can see the underlying situations that exist.
I'm gonna
And
try to
then-
go to a different spot.
Excuse me?
He's going to try and go to a different spot to get better
Okay.
Wi-Fi.
Okay. So then you see almost the experience now. We have it through Kerry in retrospect. See what was actually happening. Not Kerry's experience or John's experience or anyone's experience, but to see all the levels that are happening in the room where you're invited into the situation. You see that somehow it had to have an argument of sorts to go back and say, I'm sorry, baby, or whatever, to find that happening. And so you couldn't have produced this.
Mm,
It had to happen naturally.
mm.
And that you're the one to see it go while everyone else is engaged in this or that you're the one to see it go. And then Derek and John confirm it in a way within our circumstance.
Yes.
So to some degree, you see that we introduce something of the friendly energy to the circumstance while it was becoming literalized about saving his life or not saving his life, doing this or doing that. And the family, that was John, the literal John. The
Yeah.
evocative John was the friendship. And to some degree, you did right by the friendship by being there for it and assuming the role that you needed to assume. So that was also interesting when we then, when I was called to fly to Italy to take care of Doctor's body, while he had a retreat going, so there was 30 or 40 people from all over still there.
Oh, wow.
The
So he passed during a retreat. That's interesting.
yeah, he passed.
Wow.
He passed going to another retreat in the car at about 6 in the morning.
Oh,
He was in the front seat. They thought he was sleeping.
oh, wow.
So then the village that they passed through is called Death in German. Gee, what's the name of the city?
Oh my gosh.
So then when I got there, and I went and I think I show you the picture in the morgue. But then we requested which is hard to get, the ashes, to create the ashes. We had to slip the money under the counter and this and that. And they had an old fashioned, like an iron chair that went into the oven, that slid into the oven.
Wow.
So when it came out the next morning, the skeleton was still there. So
Oh
we
my
had to
God.
lay it on the table, and we had to break each piece into ashes, with our hands and our, so, and we split it into 3 separate places. We had to pay them another $1,000 to split it up, to take it out in 3 different places or whatever. But to be there for the whole process there, and take care of it. And then we were there for a few weeks after, I think, and the retreat kind of went on. There was an agreement that I had with doctor in India that we would then rendezvous in California and dissolve the story. Or that we would find a way to dissolve the circumstance. And so we were waiting for them for that to happen. And so they passed away in Italy. So that was very interesting then what happened, because then the situation did dissolve in Doctor's passing.
Mhm.
To a large degree, and then recreated itself. So that gave birth to almost everyone leaving and creating their own expression. And Jenny and I leaving and driving out to the few places were inviting us. Woodstock was inviting us. Key West again was inviting us. New Orleans was, Ojai. I had some talks there. They were inviting us out there. But then just an invitation here in Santa Fe where we hung out for a while. And then it seemed nice. So then other people came to visit us while we were out here, and we created a circumstance. All of a sudden there were 30 people here.
Mm.
From nothing, so it just created a presence in the town also. So it's been pretty weird. And it's about nothing. And there's been 1,000 times when it was going to disappear and reappear.
Yeah.
So what do you think? And so we're also in flux now, not only with the virus out there, with the changed circumstance, but then for Mary's expression and Brenda's expression out there, there have been some very big days or nice days. Lots of friends that are working with them that are sharing it, So it seems okay. At the same time, we've lost a few, and this has happened. There's also been a kind of beauty personally in the circumstance. So we'll see. And
It's
are you okay? Excuse me?
something weird is happening with my voice. I don't know why. Do you know why it's doing that, Derek? Well, it stopped. Maybe it stopped.
I don't know.
Twice in the past month, we've come across a freshly hit cat on the road, which really affects Lotus. Yesterday, we were downtown at a coffee shop, and when we went into the coffee shop, there was no cat in the road, and I looked out 5 minutes later, so I knew it had just been hit. It was right in the middle of the intersection. Its tail was still moving. So I went out, and it was so bloody, and its eye was popped out of its head. I couldn't pick it. I couldn't pick it up. I didn't know what to do. But we started with my kids, we started reflecting on just how fragile these bodies are. And it's amazing that we even can stick around for 100 years.
It seems like there's an accident waiting to happen. It's amazing that you can even stick around very long at all, because you could fall easily over here. This could happen. And it is happening to someone. As we speak, someone is living, someone is dying, someone is shooting. If you see the things from Afghanistan, it looks terrible with all the kids running around not knowing what to do. People, it seems that way, that there's a constant issue every week that is overwhelming, that is so cheesy, that so many people die, this is happening, that is happening. And it seems that the news presents humanity as a very cheesy species. Not a holy species at all,
Yes.
a big deal, but something that the world hopes humanity gets out of this theme very soon. We'll try something else now.
Yes.
Because they keep on messing up their own story. Okay. So then they say, that's too weird. How can it be from the beginning of time that it's just a humanity collection is repeating itself? And it has very clue of its own existence, very small clue. And then immediately as it discovers some remarkable elements in itself, it organizes it into a kind of power form. So I'm saying then the individual who has a relationship to life is in it, but not of it in that way. And of it means as soon as it becomes, you're in a circumstance, but as soon as it becomes violent towards its own system, then you start to see that you're in the story around friendships, but once the story becomes literalized, you see then your own experiences that you're in it, but you're not of it. Like I'm in the Navy as a movie, and as long as it was pure and cool, and we had, and there was a real feeling in it. But then when you actually, when you ran into something that you knew was bullshit, it was as if you were with 8 guys who were going to rape someone.
Yeah.
And they're all joking, and I say, well, maybe I'll see you later, or something like that. They say,
Like
come
it's
on,
normal.
I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And I say, look, I'm in it, but I'm not of it. I don't come from that feeling. In fact, I don't think my body could even do it, to tell you the truth. And I said, why? Because it's afraid? I said, because it's lame. Not because it's afraid, because it's not human. It's dumb shit. It degrades the feeling. And so basically, you only find out that you don't fit in with the whole in retrospect, because you may be punished for being a human being where you can't really go along. You could make believe until you could find the bathroom to get out of there, or to find a doorway to get out of there or something. So you understand the stranger in a strange land, or in it but not of it, is that you're in it until there's an experience that differs from your whole makeup, where you have to be a liar or a sneak. So my feeling is that we don't do the lying well. They can tell immediately. Your nose gets red. So I think that you're then finding, and I was just reading about a group of people who still live outside of Jerusalem in Palestine, and they're called the Samaritans. That was a real religion.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they're neither this nor that. They're neither Jews nor Christian or Palestinians or whatever, but that they are these people that were a separate original tribe that didn't believe in the religion that way, but that there was still 800. There was 1 million of them 10 or 20 years ago, they say, but now there's 800 left. And they live in that village. They go both places. They go and they work with the Palestinian people, and they work with the Israeli people, the neighbors, but they're their own separate group of people. And they're called they're in what they call Palestine. And but it was a bunch of free people. They were not part of any of the logical religions there. They were supposedly Samaritans, good-hearted people.
Did they get killed? 800 from 1 million. That's quite a few people.
800 left there. They said they don't know what their future will be. But then I remember reading some letter from my father that said that his mother in 1912 went to Palestine after her husband died. She sent my father then to a boarding school or something, because there was a war going on where they were living there, which was Greece and Turkey. And so I think they were taking the kids into the armies and stuff like that. So she sent him to boarding school, and I think that she supposedly ran away before there was an Israel or anything. It was Palestine. And they were free people who just went there in communities that worked the land or created their own communities there. So when I saw this article in the New York Times the other day about the Samaritans, it seemed like it resembled what they were talking about there. Because I never knew grandparents or anything like that, what their story was on my father's side there. I only heard that. But it did seem like the stories overlapped in the reading when they went there and what they were. So there may have been people who were attracted. I think that there was a movement in the 16th century that landed in Turkey, where they combined Christianity, Judaism, and Islam into one movement.
Oh.
Which they felt it was all one movement anyway, that one movement gave birth to Jesus, and Jesus gave birth to Islam, and
that makes sense.
And so there was a religion that I think still exists out there that was a combination of all of these in their makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say as you accidentally discover a history that you knew nothing about, you see more and more that your history is a mystery. And as you see the mystery of your life, your relationships to parental circumstance shifts a bit, because you see more of the threads that ran through the story. And it resembles more a creative act or a flux. That somehow you found a way to get into your body, that you found, as if you almost become aware in the most Meshuggah way, that you were an energy floating overhead, you were an idea in their head. You were a feeling in their being, floating over them. And somehow your own children in that were feelings that were floating around you and floating inside of you or whatever, that manifest.
Yes.
And so I feel that, but you discover your own existence and caring for the existence of the other. You see your own existence came out of a fluidity in some way, but it literalized. So because it literalized, that becomes you. But all these other elements, all these feelings, all the hidden stories are also you in the story that you discover in time. every time you discover something in your life, it changes the situation that you're in.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The discovery enters into the literal story that you're in. And you become aware then that the feelings allowed something to happen. And then you see as the feelings shift in such a way, the survival element becomes the dominating logic. So people speak from survival to each other. When before, when they were in love, the survival was like a funny thing. When the feeling falls away and you have the form that you're in, the survival of the form starts to dictate and become natural.
Yeah.
But then you see that they arranged marriages in the past because the person could earn a living and they can do this and they can do that. And then the Spiro talks to me and I say, okay, the family meets Spiro and says, this is the worst guy who's going to be to get a job or to think that way. Okay. And I say, why? I say, because he's still thinking from a yogic spiritual way and that the work is an expression of yourself. Okay. So let's say that, okay, I'm going to expect Spiro to get a job. And I say, we may do it as part of the movie, but it seems to me that if you had a relationship to Spiro, it's because you were in love with him.
Yeah.
And he was in love with you. And then whatever jobs you made or whatever things you did, you made up between you.
Mm-hmm.
But the very thing that you were attracted to in each other was that you were not job-oriented people. you were, you know, that's something, okay, that you created your own thing. And you needed the experiences in the world to create the thing that you're about. Because let's say you introduce Shakti as a lifestyle or a way of life, or let's say the energy. You see something allows you to see an energy that runs through the life. And your kind of relation, so you see then in the love affair, in the beginning, you see the energy connects and creates a reality. So your whole premise has been a kind of energy field running through the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so the philosophy became more the energy, that you perceive the energy together. It didn't literalize. You brought the human feeling into the story. So then you assume the characteristics. So I was looking at this morning where somehow, before you enter into the body, you're still a feeling and an idea, and then you will see that the body then taking shape over time, where it's literally moving from nothing to something. And then you see as it literalizes, as it's born, then it assumes a literal identity in the world. But before that, its identity was more dreams and hopes and situations. But then it enters into a literal identity while it's still carrying the element that's not, that the energy, before the story, it had no identity. Once it takes a form, it assumes an identity over time and it learns the characteristics of identity, which is survival.
Mm-hmm.
And so as it literalizes the identity, survival becomes the main ingredient of it. But then there are certain moments when it happens where the survival throws you for a loop and you come from a different place into the story. When it organizes around survival, the survival tends to suppress every other dimension and make the survival logical. So then someone can yell at you, hey, make me some tomato sauce or something like that. And they say something that was given out of affection is then ordered. And somehow this subtle difference between affectionately doing something and being ordered to do it is not a small thing, even though it's a tiny little thing. You see, an ordered life is different from a giving life. That the giving or the caring came from a different place. But that as it literalizes as a job, its elemental creative characteristics start to disappear.
Yeah.
And so then you are measured in only one thing, the job.
Mm.
And let's say, what grade would I give to Carrie if it was a job? Probably a 53. And if Kai, what grade would I give
correct.
to Kai if the situation she was in was a job? I don't think she does job that well.
No, I don't. But being a mom to my kids, I think I'm pretty good. I try anyway.
Yesterday, Mary and I went to the Levi's store. And so the woman, they were kidding around with Mary or whatever, but then the other woman was saying how they're not getting paid and they may close the store down and not.
Oh,
And so that they're not even getting paid very much. And so they brought us immediately into their circumstance.
yeah.
So what was really happening as these places were closing down, the workers were also leaving. And so but then you saw then that the people were, what a scene was going on out there about working and not working and paying and this and that. There's the whole situation out there. And yet, to some extent, in Mary's and Brenda's scene out there, and Janet just came from seeing her whole family all getting together on the beach, such different people together, that somehow there was a beauty in the folks who were working there, the folks who were hanging out in there, they were all friends.
Mhm.
So it still have been into the world a magical space where you can't depend on it to be that way forever or whatever, but you start to see the expression to be more a labor of love than a literal survival.
Yeah.
You okay, Carrie? Well, I guess.
Yeah, I'm trying to find better reception, but I'm listening.
Okay. But we'll say goodbye in a few minutes. Kai has to go. And it's just a few of us here, so that's nice. Anybody else on there, Kai?
Sorry, I was muted. We have Jimmy and Sophia and Michael Bravo.
See, the question I feel is that as you, the premise of spirituality is an exploration of another dimension in your being. But the premise that becomes in the society is how to make yourself a better worker, a better this, or better that, so that you have, it's therapeutic more than anything else. So you find out something and you utilize that. But some in the inquiry discover something that changes the literal picture of your life. And so when I said that before to my mother after her death to read her diary and discover that she was a woman and a free woman who was free to have boyfriends or girlfriends or be this or be that. And I had no knowledge that she was a woman. Of course, I literally knew she was a woman. But I thought she was a mother who happened to be a woman.
Mm.
Where others knew the woman who happened to be a mother. So they must have seen us from a very weird place.
You're right.
Let's say you discover a whole other dimension that was coexisting in plain sight that everyone else knew about, but you accidentally discover. Discovery is different than knowing. Knowing has a continuity. To discover that my mother is a woman is to shift the premise of mother and to see a kind of parallel life that they had to keep secret while they were caring for you. And you saw the dumbest things were kept secret. Why wasn't the person free to fall in love or do this thing? There had to be a sneak and a crook and a rat. And so you see that somehow the parallel world to the literal family has to be hidden, has to be sneaky if it's found out. But then you may also see that inherently in a person is a quest for a true love. And that quest for a true love may be in situations where the feeling may have created a circumstance. But if the true feeling of the love falls away, the naive feeling of the love falls away and it literalizes, the absence of that feeling has a part of you seeking it again. So while you are in the status quo of a circumstance, there's part of, if the feeling that gave it dimension falls away and it literalizes the relationship into survival, then there's a part of you that is still longing.
Mhm.
And that part of you, I feel, is sending out signals to what appears to be an individual world or an invisible world. But as you look at it, you see it's a multidimensional world.
Mhm.
So in that state, a look from someone may set off a whole awakening, a simple happening, because at that point in time, the love is not a possessive, it's an exploration.
Yeah.
So then when you have a relationship that comes out of that feeling, it seems naive to the world, but naive is an essential ingredient in the exploration, that the love affair brings an energy to the story that's exploratory. When the relationship literalizes it in its own right, then the survival of it starts to predominate. That's natural within the form. But when it literalizes, it loses the feeling that gave it substance because the logic then takes over.
Mm.
The feeling is still looking. Now, most of us manage the duality of feelings in a literal situation that we're in, and in the physical life for a true thing, a true deep expression, are coexisting. Usually we lose it before we find it. So usually, and then even the worst is that you threw it away. And then in retrospect, you see the dimensions that were hidden in plain sight. But the story took it. The thing you have been seeking had been coexisting all along.
Mm.
So somehow it's in the loss that opens up some elements of a broken heart. And in the broken heart, you see there's a place where the mind can't go. So the broken heart that would be a flaw in the literal life becomes a conversation with the energy from a different place. And I utilize the broken heart from my perspective as seeing the life from the other side of the mirror. From inside the mirror, looking back at the literal world, you don't see a history, you only see a mystery in front of you. As if things are floating past you with their own reality. So once you see it from that dimension, where the literal story of you doesn't own the story, you see that in the literal world, the literal you is who you are. From the other side of the mirror, the literal you is only an aspect of what you are. These other lives are playing out. And sometimes, like they say in that book, grok. Do you know what grok means, Derek? A stranger in a strange land. So grok was to see the whole story in one moment.
Mhm.
When you see the movie of the story and you're in the front seat and it's not your possessive, then you see dimensions of the story, but only in your helplessness can you see that, because the other one would try to possess the story and literalize it. So one seeing the story for the first time in their life would be touched very deeply by how many dimensions were coexisting.
Mm.
And that somehow it looked like it required accident to discover it. But somehow it had to be pure, not coming from the history, that it interrupted the history. So let's say we've all shared something of this experience where we've normalized it. But you see that your life is not seen as normal by most practical people. What work do you do? What job do you have? The literalization of your life is only an aspect of your life. You see that somehow you've had almost a creative life. And that as you perceive that, the creative dimensions start to have more importance. And that somehow it be true. And true isn't spelled out like truth, like rules and laws. Is that somehow you're not a liar to yourself. Because you see that most of the continuity of our lives have been based on avoidance. So then you may discover that the situation is over in time, but you see that it was falling apart for a long time.
Yeah.
So the falling apart was natural. It needed an incident to shift it. But as soon as the feeling left it, the molecular nature of the form that you're in is starting to shift. So as we literalize it in time, it's over, this and that, but you see that it was always in flux. A feeling kept it together.
Yeah.
Feeling shifted and the survival energy took over. Then it started to the energy of the creativity. The survival energy is a dumbing down of the expression. That's why I see even all these things like Bitcoin, I think, are an attempt to get out of the survival energy of literal savings and literal this being you,
Yeah.
and somehow you being more a creative expression that resembles more movies than it does a literal social security life, literally like that. It resembles more 4 or 5 movies of your life where there's you, the thread of you running through it, but in really remarkable different situation. Meaning that every time the thing shifted, you are on new ground. It was a new expression. If you see how many movies that you've had, Kai, and you see a similar thread running through the movies. But in this movie now, let's say you're an angel came to earth as a mother in Pennsylvania. And I say, I don't know that an angel could pull that one off, but okay. But let's say to some degree, we've created an atmosphere where there is somehow the history of you is not only you, that's one aspect of you. You see that there's a mystery of you that has run through the life. And so when you get a chance from that perspective to see your life from the audience's perspective as an artwork, there's something about an artwork that you're not allowed to interfere with it or change it or repaint it, or that somehow it's a pure thing in its own right. But you see the life then from the creative process in yourself. And you see a whole different experience happen. And so to some degree, in the everyday, there's a magic that runs through the story. And somehow you would say, Kai's got 2 kids, Kai's got 2 kids, Kai's got 2 cool kids. And I say, what else did she want? I said, no, that's what you got. You wanted 2 kids that are cool and that are kind of representative of something about you. So
I want a lover too, though.
a lover's waiting in the wings for you to, well, is it still waiting literally for you? I don't want to know too much of it. I just
Oh, no, I don't have anybody literally there. No.
Well, because you just waited out 1.5 years.
Oh, it's been a lot longer than that.
Yeah, I know that. But in the last 1.5 years, or 2 years almost, has been this worldwide plague.
Oh, yes.
Somehow it's navigated its way into almost everything. Everybody's plans, somehow the virus has navigated in some way or other into everyone's life in a way where it's kind of, it's pretty interesting. If we, not only the literal world of worrying about getting ill or something, but the evocative world, where there is all of a sudden an invisible thing that is coming through the story. And we are a kind of strange breed. We're in it, but not of it. So the things that they have rules for citizens to do and this to do doesn't come easy for us to follow, being forced to follow rules. somehow. It has to speak to us. This is how Meshuggah will. So it looks like we're out of the loop at times because they're forcing a world to me of do or don't.
Right.
When it speaks to you creatively. And, so then as I say, for me, then I would have to measure 81. Okay, I'll buy a year or so like that. I may do, but then it's also my relationships. I allow, since they're in the literal world. Then if I go to a doctor, Mary takes me to the doctor to be examined. There's an intermediary between myself and the literal world in some way. I may have to act like I'm dumb or I can't speak or something, but that basically the extended life is not in time like that. It is in grace. You're buying time. And I feel you can do that as once you recognize that the living and dying process is happening normally. I feel that there is a negotiation it's represented in the immune system, where I feel that throughout your life, the immune system has been negotiating, living and dying process. And I feel as you become aware that your body and your being is a living and dying process, you see the dimensions of the creative aspect of a living and dying process taking place. That perception frees you from the literal story of survival to some degree, which tends to dominate the mindset. What will we do? So doing is the measure of that self.
Right.
Where from the creative perspective, doing is a small aspect. The doer is called upon when it's needed, not that it dominates the story.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, because why? Because the doer interrupts the creative process into literalizing it. So I feel that in the painting that you're producing, in the book that you're writing, even though they're showing deadlines at you and the this and the that, it has a natural process of unfolding creatively. And that somehow, when that happens for your own being, when your life is your novel, when your life is the movie of your existence, then it shows the other people in relationship to you from a wholehearted capacity. You see that they had a life also. And once you discover another dimension in the situation, there is a respect for the other as a thou. So what you have waiting, but you have it in the form of your children to some degree, Kai, very elements.
Yeah.
I think probably a lover is waiting out there or in the making or coming out of the situation. Is that okay? Would you feel more pressure or urgency?
I don't know how to describe the feeling, but it's very strong.
So suppose Spiro flies out there and joins you all. You will just get anybody like Spiro.
I don't think Spiro's my lover, but okay.
No. Let's say if we threw Spiro into the story with you like that, he would really have an effect on Ron and the kids and everything, wouldn't he? And the population around you, whatever. Even the Trump people across the street. Okay. So just him being there. So it's not your lover, but something that would change the chemistry of the circumstance immediately.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So even if we just did it dumbly, we sent Spiro to visit for a couple of days, we're talking about changing the chemistry. So it's not Spiro per se, it's just the lifestyle that Spiro has, the expressions that he would have would be out of whack to some degree in the circumstance, but it's not out of whack with your lifestyle for you. So what is missing when you say a lover is a friend in that space also with you that has an affectionate feeling for you. But as it is now, you're sharing that with the children pretty naturally.
Yeah, there's something physical, and I don't know if this is just something I need to work through, but like I can feel tension in my muscles, and it's almost just like touch. Like
Yeah.
when I was talking about intimacy, like just that touch that only a lover can give you. That
Right.
then that I can literally feel like this tension in my.
Okay, so let's
Wow.
say your body has a temperature, and you can see when it's kind of aching for something. And so you have that, so your body is telling you that something is happening. I would say that, and it does seem to me that you're pretty accurate in some of the senses that you're having about that someone coming over to your stiff neck and saying, hey, baby, and giving you a kiss on the neck, all of a sudden you find that the neck surrenders to that feeling. So there is an I and thou in what you're talking about, which is kind of what it means to have someone caring for you.
Mm,
Because in the caring for you, they're also protecting you from the world's trips.
mm,
There's a human space between you and the experience. So I feel that what you're experiencing physically is anticipatory. By seeing that somehow the very thing that you're providing for your children, you also need.
mm,
And that a sense of here-ness or there-ness, or that there's some element that you can trust and that is here for you. So I feel that once you're having that, and it comes with the irony, I think, of the exploration, is that usually what you're caring for, you then find aspects of it happening to you. The same thing that your daughter may be needing, you also need.
right.
The same thing that you're providing for your son by presence, you also. So we've created a medium between you that gives you something of presence, and the Shanti element gives you something of presence, but you can utilize a true hey baby around this time, no? That has that conversation. I feel that once you start to experience that, it's being put in motion in some way. And that your body is the medium for a conversation out there. Is that okay?
Yes.
I'll explore that a bit further, but I'm saying that everything that you're going through, you do want to purify in a way where it speaks to you. Not make up a story about it, but you also understand that there is an anticipation that may be happening in your body.
Mm,
And you may also be coming to a time where it's really kind of necessary that there be that kind of dialogue. Okay.
yeah.
I'll see everyone.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay. Take care. I'll see you maybe Sunday, Kai.
Yes.
And others I'll see tomorrow night.
Yep. Thanks,
Okay.
Danny.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Danny.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon.